What would you do if you woke up one morning to find strangers creeping around your backyard, measuring your fence, inspecting your shed, and leaving behind a letter telling you what you could and couldn't do on your own land? That's exactly how my nightmare started. At first, I thought I was seeing things, just some animal tracks in the dirt, maybe a stray dog sniffing around. But as I stepped closer, my stomach twisted into a knot. These weren't random footprints. They were deep, fresh imprints, made by boots, circling my house like a hunter stalking prey. They led to my shed, my back door, even my porch. Someone hadn't just walked onto my land. They had been looking for something. That's when I saw it, a letter, sloppily taped to my front door. The kind of half-assed job someone does when they're in a hurry and don't want to be caught. My gut told me I wasn't going to like what was inside. I was right. HOA compliance notice. I had to read it twice just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Apparently, my property was scheduled for an inspection due to multiple compliance concerns. It went on to say that HOA officials have the right to ensure all homes within the community meet neighborhood standards. I nearly laughed. Community? What community? My house sat on private land. No shared roads. No communal spaces. No HOA. I had built this place to get away from those types of people, suburban busybodies who measured their self-worth by how many fines they could slap on their neighbors. Yet here they were, acting like they owned the place. The rage hit me before I even finished the letter. I stormed inside, grabbed my phone, and dialed the number at the bottom of the notice. A woman answered, voice syrupy sweet, the kind of fake politeness you just knew was dripping with condescension. This is Karen speaking. How can I assist you? I clenched my jaw so hard I thought my teeth might crack. Yeah, you can start by explaining why one of your people was sneaking around my property last night. A pause. Then a small, forced chuckle. Oh, we routinely conduct property assessments to maintain neighborhood integrity. It's nothing to be alarmed about. Nothing to be alarmed about? Someone had been prowling around my house in the middle of the night, and she wanted me to believe it was routine? You don't get it, I growled, my voice dropping to something low and dangerous. I'm not part of your HOA. You have zero authority over me. A sigh. The kind you give a misbehaving child who doesn't understand the rules. Actually, your property technically falls within the aesthetic jurisdiction of the HOA, meaning we have the right to ensure it aligns with community standards. I gripped the phone tighter, my pulse hammering. Aesthetic jurisdiction? That was the most made-up, corporate-sounding bullshit I'd ever heard. Let me make this clear, I said, enunciating every word like I was speaking to an idiot. If I catch anyone on my land again, I will be calling the sheriff, not your office. And next time, there won't be a conversation. For the first time, she didn't have a smug little response. I hung up before she could say another word, thinking that would be the end of it. I was so wrong. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of tires crunching against gravel. My heart slammed against my ribs. I wasn't expecting anyone. I pulled back the curtain and my stomach sank. Two men in matching uniforms stood at my front gate. One held a clipboard, the other a camera. Even from inside, I could see the smug self-importance radiating off them. I was out the door in seconds. Hey! What the hell do you think you're doing? The clipboard guy turned, flashing me that corporate-friendly grin, the kind designed to diffuse anger while making you feel small at the same time. Morning, sir. We're with HOA compliance. Just conducting a quick visual assessment of the property. He said it so casually, as if it was the most normal thing in the world to show up on a stranger's land and start documenting their home. Get off my land. Clipboard guy's grin faltered. Sir, refusing inspection may result in penalties. I said get the hell off my land. My voice echoed through the air, sharp and final. Camera guy took a nervous step back, but clipboard guy stood his ground, his smirk returning. "Sir, I don't think you understand. The HOA has the right to enforce community guidelines." I took a step forward. For the first time, his confidence wavered. "You have no authority here. No paperwork. No legal right. The only thing that's going to happen if you don't turn around right now is that I call the sheriff and have you both arrested for trespassing." Clipboard guy blinked. His mouth opened like he wanted to argue, but he hesitated. Camera guy was already edging toward the car. A long, tense moment passed. Then, clipboard guy sighed, ripped the violation notice from his clipboard, and stuffed it into his pocket. Without another word, he turned and stalked back to the car. I stood there, watching as they drove off, but I knew this wasn't over. HOA types like them? They never gave up that easily. For the next few days, it was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that felt unnatural. Like something was lurking just out of sight. Then the fines started. The first letter arrived on Friday. I opened it at my kitchen table, expecting more threats. Instead, I found an invoice. $500, excessive foliage. I frowned, rereading the words. Excessive foliage? My nearest neighbor was half a mile away, and I had trees. Not some perfectly trimmed suburban hedge, actual damn trees. The next fine arrived the following morning. $700, unauthorized structural modifications. I checked the details. They were fining me for my security cameras. By Sunday, another notice appeared in my mailbox. $900, unapproved signage. I stared at the accompanying photo in disbelief. They were talking about my no trespassing signs. I felt a familiar heat crawling up my neck. They were trying to drown me in paperwork. If they couldn't force me into submission, they'd drain me financially until I had no choice but to fold. But what happened next made me realize they were willing to play even dirtier than I'd imagined. Monday morning, the sheriff's deputy pulled into my driveway. I stepped out onto the porch, arms crossed, my stomach tightening. Deputy Mark Williams climbed out of his cruiser, adjusting his belt as he walked up. He wasn't the kind of man who wasted time with small talk. "You got a problem with the HOA?" he asked, one eyebrow raised. I let out a sharp laugh. "Yeah, you could say that." He nodded, flipping through a notepad. "Karen filed a complaint against you. Says you threatened her and her people. Says she's concerned for the safety of the community." I clenched my jaw. "Of course she did." "And?" I asked, my voice tight. Williams let out a slow breath. "And I told her if she called this office one more time with this bullshit, I'd be filing charges against her for harassment." I blinked. "Wait. So, you're not here to investigate me?" Williams gave me a flat look. "Hell no. I've seen the security footage you gave us of her and her crew trespassing on your property. If anyone's dangerous here, it's her." For the first time in days, I exhaled. But Williams wasn't done. "Off the record," he added, lowering his voice. "She's pissed you won't back down. She's escalating. And people like her? They don't just stop. You need to be careful." I nodded, my mind already racing. That night, I installed more cameras. Motion-activated floodlights. I made sure my shotgun was within reach. Not because I was paranoid. Because I knew people like Karen. And I knew she wasn't finished with me yet. That night, I barely slept. Every noise, every shift in the wind had me sitting up, heart pounding. The deputy's warning echoed in my head, Karen wasn't done. I knew that. People like her didn't accept defeat. They escalated. At exactly 2:37 a.m., my phone buzzed with an alert from my security cameras. I grabbed it, thumb swiping across the screen, and what I saw sent my pulse skyrocketing. A dark SUV had pulled up near my fence, its headlights off. Two figures stepped out, dressed in dark clothing. One held a flashlight, the other something longer, heavier. I squinted at the grainy footage. My stomach dropped. A crowbar. My hands clenched into fists. I didn't know what they were planning, but I knew damn well they weren't just here to take pictures this time. For a split second, I debated grabbing my gun and confronting them myself. But I wasn't stupid. Two unknown trespassers, possibly armed. That was how you ended up on the news, and not in a good way. I grabbed my phone and called the sheriff's office instead. "This is Carter," I said, my voice low. "I've got two intruders on my land, near my shed. One's carrying a crowbar." The dispatcher's voice sharpened. "Units are on the way. Stay inside, do not engage." But just as I kept my eyes glued to the screen, something happened that I didn't expect. The two figures suddenly froze. Their flashlights jerked upward, pointing at something off-screen. Then, in an instant, they turned and bolted. One nearly tripped over himself, scrambling toward the SUV. The other yanked open the door so hard I thought it might come off the hinges. Within seconds, they were gone. I exhaled, trying to steady my racing heart. What the hell had scared them off? I rewound the footage, watching it frame by frame. And then, I saw it. At the exact moment they ran, one of my motion-activated floodlights switched on. For a fraction of a second, it lit up their faces. And one of them was Karen. The sheer audacity of it made my blood boil. She wasn't just sending HOA goons after me. She was actively involved, sneaking onto my land in the dead of night with a damn crowbar. By the time the sheriff's deputies arrived, they were long gone. But I didn't care. I had the footage. The next morning, I drove straight to the sheriff's office, thumb drive in hand. Deputy Williams plugged it into his laptop, eyes narrowing as he watched the footage. By the time it ended, he let out a low whistle. "That's trespassing, vandalism, and possibly attempted break-in," he muttered. "You want to press charges?" I didn't even hesitate. "Damn right, I do." Williams nodded. "We'll handle it. But listen, this isn't just some HOA power trip anymore. This is criminal. And if she's willing to go this far, you better believe she's got more up her sleeve." He wasn't wrong. By the time I got home, another HOA letter was already waiting in my mailbox. This one wasn't a fine. It was a legal demand. It claimed that my security cameras and floodlights were a violation of community aesthetic standards, and that I was legally required to remove them immediately or face fines and legal action. I stood there, staring at the paper in my hands, and laughed. Not because it was funny. No, this was pure desperation. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. Karen had been caught on camera sneaking onto my land, and now the HOA was trying to make sure I couldn't record them again. They were scared. And that meant I was winning. I didn't respond to their letter. Instead, I doubled down. I upgraded my cameras, set up additional lights, and filed an official restraining order against Karen. If she so much as stepped foot near my property again, she'd be arrested on the spot. But deep down, I knew, she wasn't going to stop here. She'd already crossed the line into criminal territory. And I had a sinking feeling that she was about to push even further. I barely had time to process the sheer audacity of Karen's legal threat before the next blow came. This time, it wasn't a fine. It wasn't a fake compliance notice. It was something far worse. It started with a knock at my door. I opened it to find a well-dressed man standing there, clipboard in hand, smiling like he was doing me a favor. "Mr. Carter?" I didn't respond. I just stared at him, already knowing I wasn't going to like what he had to say. I'm here on behalf of the HOA to discuss your upcoming property auction. My fingers clenched the doorframe. My what? The man nodded, flipping through his clipboard. Your land has been listed under the Community Beautification Program. Since it's been deemed neglected and non-compliant, the HOA has filed a request to reclaim and repurpose the space. I laughed, a dry, disbelieving sound. You're trying to sell my land out from under me? Not trying, he said, like it was a done deal. The paperwork has already been processed. There are a few interested buyers. If you cooperate, this will go much smoother for you. I slammed the door in his face. I didn't waste a second. I grabbed my truck keys and drove straight to the county clerk's office. I had seen this before, HOAs filing fraudulent claims to annex private properties, manipulating paperwork to force landowners into compliance. It was a scam, and I wasn't about to let it work. An hour later, after combing through every document tied to my property, I found the forged paperwork. Karen had submitted false signatures, fabricated zoning violations, and filed it all under some bogus emergency community measure. It was fraud. It was illegal. And it was going to put her away for good. By the time I got home, the rage hadn't even settled, but then I heard it. The sound that made my blood run cold. The low, grinding roar of heavy machinery. I turned the corner and froze. A bulldozer sat at the edge of my property, its massive steel blade ready to tear through my land. A construction crew stood by, some looking hesitant, others already preparing to start. And standing right in front of them, smug as ever, clipboard in hand, was Karen. I stormed toward her, adrenaline pumping through my veins. What the hell do you think you're doing? She didn't even flinch. Instead, she gave me that same condescending smirk and held up a document, waving it like it was some kind of holy decree. You failed to comply with HOA regulations regarding landscape maintenance, she said, her voice dripping with fake politeness. As such, we are exercising our right to restore the property to an acceptable standard. My head spun. You're trespassing, I growled. You have no legal right to be here. Karen's smirk widened. Actually, we do, she said, flipping through her clipboard. According to new HOA policies, land that affects the neighborhood's aesthetic falls under community jurisdiction. Your overgrown fence and excessive security measures have led to multiple complaints, and we're here to fix that. My pulse pounded. I'm not part of your damn HOA. Karen tilted her head, feigning innocence. That's where you're mistaken, she said sweetly. She handed me another document. I scanned it quickly, my stomach churning. They had annexed my land. Somehow, Karen had gotten county approval for an HOA expansion that absorbed my property into their jurisdiction. On paper, I was now legally bound by their rules. And that meant they could enforce their regulations however they saw fit. Including demolishing anything they deemed non-compliant. I looked up at Karen, who was practically glowing with satisfaction. I told you, she said, eyes twinkling. You should have just complied. The bulldozer's engine roared to life. And that's when I snapped. I whipped out my phone and dialed 911, making damn sure everyone could hear me. I'm reporting an unauthorized demolition attempt on private property, I said, loud and clear. I have a restraining order against one of the people involved, and I have security footage proving trespassing and vandalism. The workers froze. The bulldozer operator hesitated, looking toward Karen, who had suddenly lost her smug confidence. Call it off, one of the workers muttered to her. We're not getting involved in legal trouble. Karen's face twisted in rage. We have approval, she shrieked. This is our right. But then, sirens, loud. Fast. Getting closer, Karen paled. The workers started backing away from the bulldozer, distancing themselves from the inevitable fallout. The first patrol car skidded to a stop, kicking up a cloud of dust. The lead deputy stepped out, eyes scanning the scene before settling on me. I held up the forged document. "She just illegally annexed my property into her HOA," I said, my voice steady, my anger controlled. "And now she's trying to demolish part of it." The deputy's expression darkened as he skimmed the pages. Then, without a word, he turned to Karen. "Ma'am, you're under arrest." Her screech of protest was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. The officers grabbed her by the arms, dragging her away from the bulldozer as she kicked and flailed. "You don't understand," she screamed. "This is my community. My rules, ***, you can't do this." The officers didn't care. They shoved her into the back of the patrol car, slammed the door shut, and with a single nod from the deputy, the vehicle peeled out of my driveway. Leaving Karen. Leaving the bulldozer. Leaving me standing there, watching the dust settle. For the first time in weeks, I let out a long, slow breath. It was over. At least, I thought it was. But people like Karen? They never go down without a fight. The days after Karen's arrest felt strangely quiet. No more letters, no more fines, no more sleepless nights wondering what new scheme she'd cooked up. For the first time in months, my land actually felt like mine again. But I wasn't about to get comfortable. People like Karen didn't just accept defeat, they found ways to claw their way back. I made sure that wouldn't happen. I took every piece of evidence, the security footage, the forged documents, the police reports, and sent them straight to the county zoning office, the state attorney, and every news outlet that would listen. Within days, Karen's name was plastered across local news, exposing her for fraud, harassment, and illegal land grabs. The HOA, scrambling to distance themselves, immediately disowned her. Board members resigned. Fines were overturned. Homeowners who had once been too afraid to fight back started coming forward with their own horror stories, bogus violations, illegal fees, forced compliance under false pretenses. The whole operation crumbled. As for Karen, she fought her downfall until the bitter end. Even after losing in court, even after her house was seized to pay damages, she still tried to weasel her way back into power. She filed appeals, complaints, and threats, demanding to be reinstated. No one cared. No one listened. The final blow came when she was forced to sell her house and leave town. A few months later, I watched from my porch as a new family moved in. Kids laughing, playing in the yard, the kind of peace Karen had tried to destroy. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. The HOA, now under new leadership, had learned their lesson. They no longer tried to enforce ridiculous rules with no legal standing, and anyone who dared to overstep was met with swift resistance. The neighborhood changed, and for once, it actually felt like a place to live, not some controlled social experiment. One evening, as I sat outside with a beer in hand, watching the sun dip behind my untouched backyard, I heard the familiar sound of tires on gravel. For a split second, old instincts kicked in, but when I looked up, it wasn't an HOA official. It was Deputy Williams. He stepped out of his cruiser, adjusting his belt, his usual easygoing smirk in place. "She's gone," he said simply. "Left town last week. No more Karen. No more HOA trouble. You can finally enjoy your land in peace." I nodded, taking a slow sip of my beer. I had already known she was gone, but hearing it confirmed. It felt like the final nail in the coffin. The war was over. And I had won. But it made me wonder, how many other Karens were out there, pulling the same power-hungry stunts, trying to control people's lives just because they could? Have you ever felt powerless against HOA, or Karen, rules? Share your experiences below, let's see who had it worse.